the smell of grass and leather. There were days when we'd play too. We'd cross the lines when the sun would shine and make our dreams come true. I had a glove on my hand and a girl in the stands. She stole my heart like a hit and run. It seems the world was so much simpler back then. We was just out there for fun. I pray for someone to hold your hand, and baseball in the summer, someone to walk with you when this world grows cold. Baseball in the summer, baseball in the summer.
Welcome to the BrockvMac Legendary Rivals podcast, and we're doing a Mac cast today with Mark Watson, who is proudly wearing a Team Canada or a Blue Jays probably Canada Day.
Canada Day, yes, I think it was.
Yeah, Canada Day hat, amazing, given that we are in full swing of the season. Mark,
I was going to wear my McMaster hat, but I couldn't find it. So
joining about, 99% of the people. I mean, I have a Brock jersey hanging on my wall there, so that's the only reason it's not somewhere in a laundry bin. Mark, tell us where you're at after 30 years. I'm sure you've got some teammates who you haven't, life intervenes and we all get busy, but what are you up to and what are you doing these days?
Well, for sure. I can't believe how long it's been, but feeling old, but right now I'm a teacher in Courtice in part of Clarington, right next to Oshawa. So I teach high school, teach computer science, I teach mathematics, and I have two young kids. So my wife and I started our family quite old, I guess. So 9 and 6, and they're wearing us out. We try.
Yeah.
Yeah. My son loves baseball, so we're in the backyard all the time. I think I've wrecked my arm. So I'll get into that later on because I'm coaching high school baseball, and the guys make fun of me because I can't throw the ball into who I need to throw it into. So,
well, when the old arms, when you start being able to underhand it farther than you can overhand a ball, that's probably a sign right there that DH or first base is calling your name, right?
I might have to. At the start of the season, we started training in a month ago indoors, and I was throwing batting practice and just too much, and I can't do it anymore. So today I was throwing underhand. I was playing fastball when I was young, so I was able to quite accurately throw underhand. So.
Well, we'll make sure that the Legends game is sponsored by Massage Addict. That way we can, we'll be able to kind of.
I might have my shoulder scoped or something before that and training.
So coaching baseball, you're an educator, and Courtice is out in the
East End,
Eastern GTA.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Did you grow up there, or what brought you to Courtice?
I grew up in Grafton, small little town. If you've ever heard of St. Anne's Spa, I don't know if you have.
Oh yeah.
Out east of Coburg, before the Big Apple, down that area. Small town. Didn't start playing baseball until I was 14. Parents didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of means to get me to practice. My dad was doing shift work. But my older brother loved baseball, so we were always playing in our backyard all the time. He loved pitching to me. And yeah, that hurt a lot because he would throw on the ground and I wasn't wearing a face mask, jock, or anything like that. So that's where I learned to play. And me and my buddies just playing wall ball. I don't know what you call it anymore. We tape a square on the wall. Just pitched there. That's kind of what I was doing until I was 14. Played some house league, and then my parents, when I got my driver's license, they said, "Now you can try it for rep." So I did try it for rep. Made the team, kind of as a bench player, but I worked my way up eventually to get a lot of playing time.
And Mark, where were you playing? Were you playing in Coburg or Port Hope?
Coburg,
okay.
And then eventually Coburg and Port Hope merged together. We had a good squad. Small town, so Coburg was 12,000 people. Port Hope 10,000, and we go in tournaments against AAA teams and AA. It's AA back then, and we did quite well. Didn't win.
Yeah,
Didn't win any
I remember that Coburg
championship.
team.
Do you?
I remember that Coburg team quite well because we would have to play them in our EOBA schedule, and you guys were sponsored by Kelly's
Yep.
Hotel, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
Gord
I think
Kelly
some of the
was,
Phillies were playing for them, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going way back. And the funniest thing about the Coburg base where you play, it's down by the lake there.
Yep.
And I remember we would have Sunday afternoon games, and there was a beer tent
Oh,
for fans. And I just remember the Coburg fans would always get really tuned up during games, so they were
little rowdy, small town rowdy folks. Yeah, good, supportive.
So, did you go to school in Coburg or in Grafton? Were you headed to?
Sorry, I cut you off there.
No, in Grafton. Would you were going to high school in Port Hope or in Coburg?
I went to Coburg High School. It was Coburg East. Back then there was a Coburg East, Coburg West, and then there was also St. Mary's, a Catholic school. So I went to Coburg East. They didn't have a baseball team. We just played in gym class, essentially. Yeah. It was a pretty good school. Not great, but it was
and probably spending most of your summers on the beach in Coburg, which is...
No, honestly,
no?
I did not. I don't think a lot of Coburg people appreciated the beach. It was there, but we were too busy working or playing baseball, partying. It wasn't really till I was teaching and kids were like, "Oh, we're driving to Coburg Beach." I'm like, "Oh, I guess it is a place to go to."
Yeah, it doesn't occur to you, right? When you live right there, it's kind of like, yeah, you know.
I don't think I went there more than once or twice growing up.
Wow. Okay, well, the allure of the ever elusive beach body is, maybe
never
not
had that,
never will. Mark, so you're playing some rep ball with Coburg, and it's EOBA ball, so you're going probably as far east as Kingston to play, and Peterborough, and these kinds of centers.
We go far as Pickering as well, to the west side.
Yeah. And what position were you playing at the time as you're working your way through?
Playing outfield, mostly right and left. Sometimes I was referred to as a bit of a circus out there, so not the best at judging balls initially. So it's a skill I picked up over time.
Okay. And were there some coaches other than your brother, obviously, with his playing, aka torture of you when you were younger? Were there some coaches that were influences and maybe helped you with your swing or helped you love the game?
Yeah, there was a coach named Dave Bemme. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago to cancer, I believe. And he was a diehard baseball player. Like, he was coaching. That was his joy. He used to coach baseball. So he said, anytime you guys want to hit the batting cages, whatever, I will be there. I don't know what he did for a living, but he was always there. So right after school, I'd go down to the batting cages and jump in there with a couple of buddies, and that helped so much. And just his words of wisdom, like, Mark, concentrate on this. Next time you do this, especially outfield, you want to, depending on the situation, obviously, sometimes you got to get that ball and get rid of it as quick as possible, right? So you want to front and be stepping into your throw. So stuff like that. He was just words of wisdom, I guess. And when I did screw up, he was the first guy to say, like, shake it off, don't worry about it. Everyone does it. So I think that's the guy that really stuck out to me. And
it's a really good attitude to have, because you really, baseball, even when you're doing well, you're not succeeding 2/3 of the time when you're a hitter, or, I've never known a pitcher that has never lost a game or never given up a home run or never given up a walk. So it's good to have that kind of resilient attitude there.
For sure. And I had some really good teammates. I had some really talented squad, especially I think it was the year when I was 17, 18. We had a lot of good players. We had guys getting scouted. We had a couple guys probably could have played in minors, but he decided to go the hockey route instead. We had another guy throwing 92, 93, which was fast back then, right? Now it seems all the major leaguers are high 90s, 100 now. His problem was he would just throw it straight. So he'd strike guys out the first few innings, and then you just get pounded at the last couple. Good guys, though.
Yeah, that's movement is an unappreciated factor in a pitcher's success. When you're in high school, do you have a career in mind at that time, or you're just looking to extend into post-secondary? Like what things are kind of floating around you as you're getting ready to select a university at that time?
Honestly, I didn't have any idea what I wanted to do until I was 19. So back then, as you know, we had the OEC/grade 13. And that's kind of the year I figured out what I want to do engineering. So I went into engineering at McMaster. I was a big time introvert. So that was kind of probably the good field to go into, that or computer science. So I ended up selecting McMaster to do engineering.
Was it the only school that you selected, or typically for engineering you're going to be seeing Waterloo, Queens, and or U of T end up in that mix as well?
I got accepted into computer engineering at Waterloo and at Queens. But funny story there, I got accepted. I got the letter. You've been accepted to applied science. I said, I don't want applied science. I want engineering. And I didn't realize till years later it was the same thing. So I didn't end up going for that. Probably a good thing. It was too close to my parents because it was an hour, 10 minutes to my parents' house. And I didn't want them visiting me. So I went to McMaster across the city, and yeah, they'd visit me once a year, possibly.
Yeah, well, that seems to be a big, big criteria for everybody. It just needs to be inconvenient enough that my parents either have to phone to let me know they're coming, or that it's hard for them to get there, because the surprise visit is death in university, as we all know. Sure.
My dad hates driving on the 401. He hates driving through cities, so I knew he wouldn't do that drive very often.
It's super cool. Now, were you in residence when you first got into Mac?
I was in Woodstock, which I had went back tonight and read some old emails from guys, and I didn't know some of the history behind Woodstock and how that was kind of where I believe Mac baseball kind of got going. Some discussions, maybe with some beers or not. So I was at Woodstock, and I actually found out about baseball through Brad Reason. He was Don on the 5th floor, I think. So we got chatting at a party, and I found out he played baseball, and he said, "Hey, come out to tryouts in the fall." I'm like, okay. And that's what I did.
My God, Reason with responsibility of any sort is kind of a ridiculous concept. How was he as a Don? Was he tough?
I was actually on the 6th floor.
Okay.
But he was on the floor below me, and we crossed paths many times, and he seemed good. He seemed like such a nice guy, as you all know, and carefree sometimes. And
yeah, that's amazing. So Brad kind of recruits you, and you're taking engineering at McMaster. Now, what we haven't had a lot of engineers. We've had a lot of people who are in medicine and kinesiology and these kinds of subjects. It's fairly math heavy. Were you concerned that you could balance academics with a varsity sport at that time?
It was tough. I was thinking about that earlier this week. I think baseball, when I added it all up, we were probably doing more than 20 hours a week once you factor in travel time, practices, all those different things, waiting for buses, all that. And yeah, my marks definitely struggled. I would say that. But I wouldn't go back and change that at all. Like, it was such a good experience being a part of the baseball team. They became my brothers essentially at university. So I made it happen. I was pretty sharp. I wasn't brilliant, but I was pretty sharp, so I was able to pull it off. And you mentioned there weren't many engineers that you had talked to yet, but there's Jeff Aikett, and there's a few. Who else? I'm just looking at a team list here. Oh, maybe there wasn't a ton. Definitely Matt DeDecker was an engineer. A few others.
Yeah, no, it's good, and it's always good to have some teammates who are in your faculty, because sometimes you're like, oh man, I forgot to do this and I'm up against it. Can someone kind of, we have a pretty famous story at Brock where there was an essay on Pearl Harbor that may have recycled its way through 4 or 5 students, right? And then they got different marks on it, which is hilarious, right? Because it's always the same essay, but you got to do what you got to do to get through to survive the fact that you're now adding 20 to, in our case, we were probably closer to 35 to 40 hours a week.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Because we had we played twice as many games as anyone else. We played 34 games. I forgot, right? Yeah. Yeah. So,
travel too, longer distance, I guess. We were McMaster, I think, was a little more central, maybe. to.
A little more central to Guelph or to the Canadian teams, but we were also going across the border for 3 or 4 hours, right? So lots of different things there. And, it's tough to balance. So with engineering, which is not forgiving from an academic standpoint.
It was heavy. It was really heavy.
I can imagine that you were burning the candle at both ends there.
I use my resources as well. So
what do you, when was the first time you met a coach, and what do you remember about the tryout process? I mean, other than Brad saying you should come try out.
So I think back then I might have emailed, I think it might have been Don. And he replied, and yeah, here's our schedule. Let's see if you can make it. I'm like, okay, I'll make it. So I remember getting off work early. So this is me driving from Grafton. And I left tons of time. I'm like, okay, Hamilton's not that far. I checked, talked to my parents. Oh, it's this far away. It took me 3.5 hours to get there. So I was late to the tryout. Not too late. I was probably 20 minutes in. So I gave myself that much extra time. But just getting there, stuck in traffic, I'm just freaking out. I'm like, I'm going to get cut before I even get changed. So when I did get there, I remember Hank came over and just introduced himself. And he's like, late to the first tryout, eh? Might make our cuts easier. So I was terrified. So it was not the best start. I was sweating. I got out there. Once I settled down, it was all right.
Yeah, there's nothing like a coach saying that before you've even taken a swing or you track down a fly ball.
Henry was straight to the point. Donnie was a little more diplomatic. He's like, all right, just don't make sure it doesn't happen again. So next day definitely was not, or next Friday was definitely not late.
Yeah, so and you trying out for the team as an outfielder, I take it at this point again, and what are your early impressions of the team? Because you probably don't know a lot of the players because a lot of them are Hamilton based and wouldn't have seen them in the OBA. What was your thought on the level?
I didn't know anybody.
Okay.
So some guy just stood out right away. Like I remember Cooper. He was playing center field, I believe, and he made everything just look so. He was a bigger guy too, and I was surprised how fast he was, and it was a little shocking, a little intimidating. But he was a nice guy to talk to, and he gave me some tips and stuff in our drills. Just the quality of people, and I think people were just helpful. Like I assumed it would be more of a standoffish, like I'm trying to compete against you, don't talk to me type thing. But everybody seemed to be helpful. I do remember Newton telling me. I think this was after we got inducted to the Hall of Fame. He said, Watson, we were this close to cutting you. And we had an exhibition game, I think against like Ontario Jays or like one of the young teams. And I think I had a good game. I had a double and a walk. So he's like, that's saved for life right there. So I'm so happy I had that good game because he's like, yeah, we had other outfielders. You didn't really stand out. You had a little bit of speed, stuff like that. And we almost cut you.
Did you have a feeling while you were trying out that it was that close, or were you kind of impervious as to what was surrounding you at that time?
I knew it was close. I never had the most self-confidence when I was young, so just doubted myself to begin with. And I knew there's some other good guys, but I worked my butt off. I tried my best. I think I made some good plays. Like I mentioned, I was pretty quick. I wasn't the fastest guy in the team, but I think they knew I could pinch run if I needed to. I could lay down a bunt, so I think I had some aspects that you're looking for.
Well, that's good, Mark. I mean, I think, obviously you're a good team guy and willing to do many things. It's hard on a team like that that's got some shining stars on it, that are pretty shiny. Do you have any memories from your first season in '96? It's a year in which you're battling it out with Brock and U of T typically, and you'll have seen some horrendous baseball out of George Brown, and Guelph wasn't so strong at that point.
Oh, for sure.
But what was your take on your first season? How did you feel you fit in, and what benefit were you getting out of playing?
I think the biggest benefit was just being part of the team, and we practiced so much more. I was also during the summer, I was playing rep. I was playing whatever it was at the age group, under 18. I forget what it was called back then. And I was also playing fastball back then, so that was a bit of a mixture. And just with the team, I think it was the amount of practice and the coaching, and just listen to Newton. Like he had a lot of he was a baseball guy, obviously. He just had so many good tips. And I think Hank was working more with the outfield. So there was some drills that maybe the outfielders were kind of dogging it and didn't let us dog it anymore. So we just had to do more and more reps. And he's like, until I'm happy with what you guys are doing, until you're doing what I tell you to do, you're doing more and more reps. And just stuff like that. Like, we started holding each other accountable. We would press each other. We would compete each other to do the drill better, whatever it may be. As far as the season went, definitely at the start of the season, everyone talked about Brock and how they were the best. They're the team to beat, right? I can't remember which year. It was 96 or 97. We actually got to play in a Skydome. I don't know if anybody else that you.
It was 90. It was 96 because I was actually running the league then with.
Oh wow, okay.
My VP. So we put you guys in a game against U of T, and Brock played at Durham College. So what was it like playing in the Dome? Did you like that?
That was amazing. I had been there as a fan, obviously, but to walk out there, I think when you're down in the dugout and out in the field, you don't realize how truly big that field is. And I remember, I think it was Cooper or one of our other heavy hitters. I think they just launched a ball, and we were like, "That's out." Hit the wall. It's like anywhere else, any like our regular season games, that would have been out. But that sucker hit the wall and ended up with a double or something like that. I got to go into the game probably the 5th inning, so I got to go right field, and I remember standing there just shocked and awe of this place and how massive it was. Not a ton of fans, but it was just an amazing experience. And then somebody hit a line drive, a little bit higher, and it bounced in front of me. And normally on grass, no problem. I would have caught right here. That sucker went high. I don't think I've ever jumped so high. I ended up catching it, but it could have been pretty embarrassing because that's a long way to that wall. Especially, I think it was a right-handed hitter, so I was playing a bit shallow. So, yeah, probably would have been a triple at least if I had missed that sucker.
It's never a good sign when your numbers are facing the infield and you're having to run and get a ball, right? So I'm great. I'm glad that you really enjoyed that experience, and
I tell my kids about it. I tell my students about it. It was so. If you organize that, thank you very much. That was awesome.
Yeah, it was. We had some help, obviously, but there's a gentleman named Mark Lino who worked for the Blue Jays who was quite happy to showcase Canadian University baseball, and we had I remember an article in the Globe and Mail, an article in the Toronto Sun, and we had some TV coverage. So, it was a good showcase for the sport as it was developing, and that led to almost a tripling of the league size. So, I'm glad you were able to put on a show with your leaping catch I
think I ended up in a walk or a pop it. One of those two. I'm going to say walk. Just
Mark, obviously you're making some new friendships in there, and we'll get to 97 and you guys winning a national championship in a bit, but any of your teammates really standing out as people you're starting to develop closer relationships with? Is it with the outfielders because you're part of that position group, or they're just, you guys are a pretty tight team from what I gather?
Pretty tight. I think if I had to pick a specific group, probably some of the younger guys. Matt Greeley, Dexter Brozo, some of those younger guys. Especially Dexter Brozo. He was in engineering as well, so we got to talk about that stuff. Just maybe not as much as some of the 3rd or 4th year guys. That first level part. Eventually, we definitely grew as a family. But early on, it was probably more hanging out with the younger guys and maybe the guys that weren't getting as much playing time because we're hanging out in the dugout and tossing the ball to the fielders, all that stuff, right? So I would say that. And eventually, got accepted as part of the group. I still remember our rookie initiation. I want to go into details.
I was going to say that the statute of limitations is likely expired, but the problem is when you put it out on video, it's there for good, right?
Yes, yeah. We never did anything bad, but
no.
Some good nights. Let's say that.
I think that's great, and 96 is another year where you guys come up just a little short. And then 97 is a year where there's an influx of talent. You know, your coaches and your other players have spoke significantly about people like Scott Hughes and
Yeah.
Brett Gibson coming into the fold, and
I was gonna mention that. Like my second year was like, okay, I'm a little bit older now. Maybe I'll get a little more playing time. But then I saw these young guys come in. I'm like, nope. These guys are studs. These guys are coming in. They're taking spots right away. So yeah, they're very impressive.
well, yeah. Before we dive into winning and slaying the Brock Dragon, um, how did you stay mentally focused to go into the game when the coaches would tap you on the shoulder, knowing that, like a lot of times when you're on the bench, you're staying loose and you're probably chewing sunflower seeds like most guys do, and kind of observing the game. But how did you stay focused so that you could do your best when you got into games? Likely a lot of times halfway through, or coming off the bench.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was just either going out and throwing the ball to the left fielder. Depends on what side you're on, obviously. Throwing the ball out to them, bring the balls back in, warming up the pitcher before the catcher got out to warm them up. Just cheering. I said I was an introvert in high school, but when it comes to baseball and other sports, I am loud, and I was quite loud. A few others, and we cheer as loud as we can, try to get the guys going. Anytime we had a chance, we go out and just toss the ball around, things like that. That was the key. Stay warm, stay into the game. Usually the games were quite exciting, so I enjoyed the game too. So it made a big difference.
Well, it's good. It's good to be a fan of the game you're playing. 97, you guys beat Brock out in the Ontario final to go to nationals, and do so on a rather dramatic, come from behind situation. Was it a sense of relief, or was it more just like complete, joy that you guys have, beaten your arch enemy to get to the nationals? Because it seems from there that boulder rolls downhill and you guys have a very successful, run at the nationals where you don't lose. Did it mean that much to beat Brock in that way?
Oh, huge. I don't know how the other guys felt, but kind of felt like that was the championship right there, right? They were like you mentioned before, the dragon to slay. I think it was a combination of pure joy to win and a bit of shock that we pulled it off, especially in that fashion. I think I mentioned before we started this call, my memory's fading a bit and things are blurring in, but I definitely remember that day. I think, if I remember correctly, it was a nice, beautiful, sunny day, and yeah, it was pretty amazing. The bus ride home, fantastic bus ride home, and we ended up at a bar called the Snooty Fox, and I won't go into the details there, but let's just say I ended up losing my jersey there, and I went back the next day to find it. Nope, it's gone. So I forgot to tell Donnie about that, who I forgot to mention before. Fantastic coach, really love that guy. He's like, I already put the team rosters in there, and you're number 4. So unfortunately, you can't play in the national championship. So I'm not sure if he was just telling me that, or that was one of the hard rules of the national championship. And I think I ended up 6. I think it's tough.
Yeah, given the the eligibility rules that allowed Scott Hughes to play for 10 years, and for Rob Pino to probably play 6 or 8, or
Yeah.
and look, we just had a podcast on the Brock side where Nathan Kapusa, who was a catcher, who was going to be our starting catcher at Brock, he played for the University of Guelph in 1994 when he was in high school, not even attending Guelph. So clearly, some institutions had more lax eligibility rules than others. So I'm pretty sure you wearing a different number probably wouldn't have gotten you kicked out of the Nationals. So,
no, I talked to him a little later on. I believe he was just joking, but it was my own fault.
So, Mark, you win a national championship, which is the crowning achievement for any program, and you come back for one more year in '98. Is that how's schooling going along at this time, and are you starting to sharpen up on what you want to do in the next steps of your life, other than attending university?
Yeah, I think by that time, other than baseball, I was ready to be done with university. It was the 4th year in. I think a lot of us are that way. We're like, just set me out in the world, right? I want to make some money. I want to go see some things. So graduated there. Maybe, I don't know about you, but my last set of exams, maybe I didn't put as much effort into it as I should have, because I was done.
Yeah.
I had to move on. After that, I actually ended up in Europe as a software engineer. So that was pretty exciting. I worked there for almost 4 years. I played some club hockey over there. Not quite semi-pro. I tried it a couple times, and I wasn't quite fast enough compared to the European skaters. I became a bit of a Canadian goon, even though I'm not that big. I played hockey growing up all the time, and in university I ended up playing just intramural. I actually played with Brad Eason. So I went over there, played club hockey, and my very first game, I had forgotten it was body contact. So
Ooh.
They don't normally hit very hard, but they knew I was a Canadian, and they were chirping me as the Canadian and the Canuck and all this stuff, and some swear words in Swiss. And probably my second shift, I got hit open ice and just almost knocked it.
Oh boy!
There was contact. So after that, no problem.
So let me ask you this: how did you end up in Switzerland? It sounds like. How did you end up there to begin with? Was there a company recruiting on campus, or was it happenstance?
It was I should have gave you some context here. My mother was born in Switzerland, so I actually had a Swiss passport. So that helped me get a job there. And a little bit of nepotism. My uncle was quite high up in a company. He was in charge of 3,000 people. So my mom said, hey, or my mother said, can you get him a job? He got me a job there. And 4 years later, I came back to Canada. But great time over there. Very different world. I loved it there. Skiing, snowboarding, traveling around Europe. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play baseball there. There was no local baseball around me, so I basically stopped playing baseball after university.
Yeah, no, it's
ball after that.
Did you get to travel much? Obviously, it's a much more connected space with lots of countries. Did you get to travel to some of the other countries around Switzerland? To explore Europe while you were there?
Oh, for sure. The company I worked with was a very international company. So I worked with guys from England, Wales, France, Italy, Eastern Europe, all over the place, Sweden, everything else. So good buddies. So we'd end up traveling to different countries together. Eventually with cousins, I had tons of cousins there, so we'd travel. There'd be cases where I'd be with my cousin. We're like, "What do you want for lunch today?" And he's like, "Pizza." All right. So we drive across the border to Italy for pizza, stuff like that. It was pretty wild. Or we wanted French cuisine, so we took a half an hour drive across the border and had a beautiful French restaurant for really cheap. Just stuff like that. And the flights, right? $80 to fly, and that was one of the more expensive ones. $80 to fly to Ireland for the weekend.
Yeah.
Really, really nice and convenient. But then you spend a lot of money
there. Well, so what brings you home? Like, it sounds like you're living and loving life there, but something must prompt your decision to come home. Were you feeling a little bit homesick?
It was a few things. We had really good holidays there, and I'd fly home a couple times a year. I definitely miss my family. My older brother, I mentioned before, he'd ended up having a few kids, right? And I wanted to see them and be a good uncle and all that stuff. So that was part of it. It was also when the that initial tech boom crashed. Around 2000, when was it? Early 2000s, right? That's when it crashed. So my company went from 400 software engineers and electrical engineers down to 100. So I was one of those cuts of actually it was 350 cut. So I ended up spending a little more time in Switzerland and came back to Canada and kind of tried to find a job here. It was quite funny. When I came back to Canada, they were like, I go for job interviews and they go, we're trying to hire somebody with Canadian experience. It's like, working in Switzerland, they're farther ahead of you guys. They're multiple years ahead of you guys in terms of technology. It was probably a nice way of them saying, we just don't like it. But I had that quite a bit. We want people with Canadian experience. It made it tough.
No, that sounds like it was a bit frustrating. And sometimes they do that, and sometimes it's because they're afraid you're too expensive or whatever the deal is.
That's a better way to look at it. I wish you told me that back then. Eventually, I found a job. I had to kind of work my way up. I was in a consulting engineering firm, and I was hating my life. It was 60 to 90-hour work weeks. I was so unhealthy and no life at all. And I remember coaching hockey. I was coaching baseball. There was a few times Mac hosted kids for little baseball clinics. I remember I participated in that. I loved it. And I'm like, I'm going to try teaching. I heard that's really easy and get summers off. So I got into teacher's college and became a teacher. And I realized, well, as far as I go, it was not easy for me. A lot of work, tons of hours as well. Just different life. So most days I'm happy I went in teaching.
Yeah, and where did you attend teachers college?
It's now called Ontario Tech, so UOIT, up by Durham College there. So is that?
Yeah. And then are you back in Grafton at this point? And
no, I was living in Oshawa at the time. So I lived in Oshawa. Got a placement at Courtice. Actually, no, I got a placement in a couple other schools in Cobourg and Bowmanville. And again, nepotism. I knew somebody at the Courtice High School. She got me in for an interview, and I've been there ever since. 17
Good for you.
18 years ago, whatever it is.
You look really young for someone who's been teaching that long. Tell me about, so life is back in Canada. You decide to pivot to teaching, and are there other developments in your life at this point that are meaningful to you?
Sorry, you cut out that last part of the question.
Yeah, you move back to Canada. Obviously, you pivot pretty hard into teaching from engineering. Yes. Are there any other things in your life that are big developments at this point? Maybe family oriented things, or are you married? Like those kinds of things. Are those things entering into the equation?
A few years later, I met my wife online, which quite a few of my friends now I find out met their wife online. She lived in Toronto, so East York. So we started dating eHarmony type thing, and things went really well. On our second date, she mentioned that she would never live in Oshawa. Toronto, so, all right. So things went really well, and a few years later, we got married, 2013, and I think in 2011 I actually moved to Toronto, in East York itself. Actually, no, Young and Egg. Do you know much about Young and Egg? That was fun. Definitely a lot of energy in that area of the city. Tons of young people there, tons of things to do. Eventually moved out to East York, and I know there's a good East York program out here. I don't know if any of my teammates ended up playing for East York, but you mentioned that. Yeah,
it's a pretty famous baseball program. The Butler brothers played there, and it's Andy Green, the coach of U of T that you would have played, or one of the coaches. Rick Johnston was the other. He was the East York coach, so out of that East York program. So
one of my buddies is actually the coach for the senior team now. He's been for years. I don't know if you know Sal. He just goes by Sal.
It would look pretty funny on the back of a jersey. So, that sounds like an exciting development in your life. And you've got this great consistency in terms of being a teacher. When do you start to pick up coaching and, these kinds of things where you're infusing your love of sports into youth?
Basically my first year teaching, because back then it was basically young teachers were expected to participate, to help coach. So I think I started off with coaching volleyball. My younger brother is a really good volleyball player, so I had him come out and help me coach. And then somebody's like, we have a football team. We need a teacher supervisor. So I ended up coaching that, and that was quite the eye-opener. Our team got destroyed every game. We had an outside coach. I had to deal with so many concussions, and my outside coach ended up recruiting couple years later, recruiting some of his former players, but they'd show up to games drunk, and then we're like, nope, we're stopping this. Our equipment was too old, and I don't know if you know much about football helmets, but they're so expensive. So we ended up folding the program after that. And then I was coaching rugbies, coaching ultimate frisbee, coaching girls hockey, just doing too much. I was doing too much. I love coaching, but it took up a lot of time as well. Not to mention I was supposed to teach and doing all the prep work for that. So it was a lot, but it helped keep me my job there. It helped the principals notice that, and yeah, I think if I didn't coach, I probably wouldn't have the job there.
Well, I think it's good that you step up, and you probably impacted lots of young people's lives. Is there, what would you say is the main thing that you enjoy about being a teacher and an educator? Like, is it the ability to have so many touch points with different people, or, are you really into what you're teaching? Like, sometimes it's about who you're influencing, and sometimes it's about what you're teaching.
Yeah. So I started off teaching mostly math, but I've had to teach other things, phys ed. I had to teach English once a year, which was not a good experience because I'm not the best at English. I think the big thing is I love teaching math, so I hope that came out. Still a struggle. There's a lot of students that still don't like math. I'm guessing the majority don't like math, but I tried to make it fun for them when I could. They still had to learn the skills, things like that. I love computers, so I started teaching computer science and computer engineering. And when you can see kids just grab a hold of it and start just blossoming or basically building their skills on their own, right? All of a sudden, instead of me having to teach them, they're researching information, they're trying this, trying that, problem solving. That really energizes. I love that. When I can see them developing without my help. That might sound weird because my job is to help them, but I think the bigger job for me is to get them passionate to something and get them that ability to learn on their own, that lifelong learning thing, right? That is truly joy for me. And when the kids are like bragging, Mr. Watson, see what I did? I figured this out, and I looked this up, and I found this, and that makes me really happy. That makes it worth it. Because there's a lot of hard days.
Have you seen an attitude change a little bit when it comes to things like computer engineering and computer science and math? Because, there's been some societal undercurrent. In a good way, it's driven by pop culture, but in this case, Big Bang Theory comes around and takes, what used to, there was a bit of a stigma for engineers, as we all know, and math types and the rest of it. And it became pretty cool. And now people have adopted things like, STEM learning systems and these kinds of things. So do you feel it's become more, it's kind of avant-garde? It's a little cool now to be in these disciplines a little bit. Tell me a bit about how you've seen it change.
It's definitely changed. More females, and we're hoping for more and more, but definitely more females participating. For lack of a better word, jocks. The sporty guys have signed up and enjoy it quite a bit. So they're doing their computer science and they're going off to play rugby or going off to play baseball or whatever it is, right? So it's definitely lost some of that stigmatism. I think there's definitely a change going on now with AI. I'm battling that, and it's a struggle because kids are finding out that it's pretty easy to use AI to generate code now to do the work for them. So I'm not sure where that's heading. I'm trying my best to try to instill that it's still important to know the basics, still important to understand the problems and understand what they're doing, because the more you understand, the better you can use AI, the more you can prompt it. Going back to the diversity, yeah, definitely a better cross-section than it was when I started teaching it 12 years ago.
Yeah, AI is fascinating, right? From a fundamental standpoint.
Scary too.
It is, because of the shortcuts it provides people to get around the fundamentals, right? You don't need to learn when you can just have someone generate your essay, and it's or any kind of, you're right, if they have to write code, it's pretty easy to get around what the teacher's asking you to do, and
well, what they're realizing is it's not perfect, obviously. So if they don't know what they're doing, they don't use AI properly. They can't generate things properly. So I'm noticing that as well. They're realizing, this is not perfect. This is not going to solve all my problems. And now it's a battle, right? We got to use all these testers to see if they are cheating on their reports and things like that. So.
Oh my goodness! Does marking take longer as a result of having to test for this stuff, or is it just the fundamental trust between student and teacher is now a little bit strained?
I try my best to trust them, but it's usually the ones that stand out. All of us, they go from being a 60% student to producing the best work out of the entire class. So that kind of catches my eye. And usually I catch them, and I have not had a single student say, no, I didn't cheat. They just, okay. Basically, their first question is, can I redo it?
Yeah. That's pretty cool that you're helping at least provide some accountability to the technological changes that we deal with. Mark, simple question. Knowing that have a younger, family and these kinds of things. What is it you want to get accomplished in the next, 5 to 10? Given that it looks like you've checked off a lot of the to-do list and have some stability in your life. You're going to use that as a platform to do some other things that maybe you haven't gotten to yet.
Definitely travel. I would like to do a lot more traveling. It's one of those things. We've traveled a bit, and like I mentioned before, when I was in Europe, I traveled quite a bit. But ever since I came back, I kind of got away from that. So now with the family, we're trying to do some more traveling. We're going to hit the East Coast this summer. Eventually, I want to take my kids to Africa or South America and get them to experience that. Just things like I would definitely like to do some more traveling. Sorry, my cat's jumping up here. And I just want to give my kids a really good experience in life, essentially, which all parents I know want to do. My kids are really getting into sports now, especially my son. So now all of a sudden,
your fan club has invaded the podcast here.
Once pets, they start to ask, who's going to coach? We need volunteer coaches. So initially my plan was not to coach my son. I wanted to sit back and enjoy watching him play, but I realized, no, I gotta put my time in, and he loves when I coach. So that's part of it. And eventually I'll coach my daughter once she gets a bit older. Oh, my cat's trying to eat my food now. Sorry.
That's okay.
Just as far as work goes, I want to maybe eventually become a vice principal. Probably not a principal, but I could see myself trying to get an admin. I don't know if I'm going to do that though, because I don't think you get to teach, right? It's a different world.
Yeah.
Vice principal. Sorry. Yeah, I think traveling, helping coach my kids. Maybe those aren't that big of goals, but that's where I'm at.
See the Blue Jays win another World Series in our lifetime. That would be nice.
Yes, I'm a Leaf fan, unfortunately. So,
well, not unfortunately, they finally won a game in the playoffs against Boston the other day. So that's a good start. Anyway, it's better than being down 2-0.
I became a fan at 10, so I've been a Leaf fan for 38 years. So it's been up and down for.
It's been more down than up, but I do remember, maybe this is the year. I have a funny feeling about the team. They showed a lot of character coming back after getting their doors blown off in game 1. So that's always a good sign.
Yes, I'm just trying to get my hopes up. I figure if I just keep them low, they can surpass those.
Low expectation. Yeah. Is that, Mark, let me ask you this. Do you stay in touch with many of your teammates from McMaster? Or are there a few that you bump across in the teaching circle? Because there's a fair amount of teachers, and
there is. Unfortunately, not. And I was thinking about that today. I wish I did, because we were very close back in the late '90s. There, I think part of it was me going off to Europe and then coming back, and I was living in Markham for a while, in Oshawa, and I just lost contact. And back then it wasn't as easy, I guess, to stay in contact. We didn't have, I guess Facebook came on later on and things like that. So I wish I had it. So I had some really good friends. And when we had met at the induction to Hall of Fame, I got some numbers, and just with kids now, I have barely any time for anything, unfortunately. Tonight, couldn't start till 7 because I was bringing my daughter back from dance. Just things like
well, I think all of us have the same tour shirt that says, I wish I could be cloned with Dolly the sheep, right? Like, I need another one of me to just handle this.
I enjoy it, but it's like you say,
it's testing on all kinds of relationships, not just your friends from university or your friends from baseball, but it's sometimes hard to see family. It's hard to see, Now, you mentioned your brothers. Are they close, or do you have to travel to see them?
My younger brother lives in the Beaches area, so I get to see him quite a bit. Not as much as I'd like. Unfortunately, he's battling cancer right now, so it's been a tough.
Jesus!
tough year or so. Last found out last March, I think it was. So my daughter had a really bad health issue. A couple days later, I found out about my brother's cancer, and then one of my best friends from university ended up committing suicide. So that was not a good time.
No, in life,
is tough for a lot of people.
Yeah, it gives us imminent joy, but it also gives us challenges, and cancer is something that obviously we're well acquainted with. It brings me to
back to recent there, and
we think of Brad when we think of this, but also Jeff Lounsbury, the coach of the Badgers, has had his battles with cancer as well. Is your brother's prognosis okay, or is it a battle?
It's gotten a little bit better. I think he's going to Sunnybrook, which is one of the best hospitals in Canada, if not the world. So things are looking better, but you don't know. Like, they're still waiting on a few tests and they're waiting on a few checks. Just fingers crossed, and he's got to do the best he can. And it's definitely draining for him. And it's sad to see, or hard to see, how down his body gets sometimes.
Yeah, the cycle of chemo is tough. It's there's lots of rounds of it.
Chemo, he's doing immunotherapy, which I don't know the details of that. We have to ask one of our doctors.
Yeah. Well, and your role as a brother is to just probably keep him loose and just do the best you can. It's always awkward and difficult because as a brother we'd take on that task, right? It's hard when you have kids and you've got a wife, but I would have gladly switched places with my brother when he was dying. So at Sunnybrook, so I know the hospital very well, and you're right, it is an amazing place, but he's in good hands, and hopefully this is a success story, and so let's touch a little bit about Brad as a teammate, because we're obviously reconvening 30 years later to benefit a couple of scholarships, one after Brad's name at McMaster, and the other one for a great guy that everyone's going to get a chance to meet, Todd Nye on the Brock team, who's a gentle giant, but who had a very unfortunate, accident that cost him some vision in his eye that ended his baseball career at Brock. Wow. Tell me what Brad was like as a teammate and your reflections of getting a chance to watch his act up close. He's a unique type of character, I think, in that he's a vicious competitor, but just a gentle guy off the field. What were your thoughts of Brad? Did you have any
like I mentioned,
memories?
He's the guy that got me into it, and he just seemed like he was always happy, always positive, so smooth. I know a couple other people mentioned how smooth he was on the field and hitting. It was incredible. I thoroughly enjoyed watching him, and he never seemed to get down. Like, if somebody made a mistake, he was not getting on him. He would just try to lift him up. Awesome teammate, awesome. And he's a guy that actually tried to model, like, he was a good model for me, essentially. I tried to be more like Brad. I played intramural hockey with him, and I remember one time we were in the finals, just intramural, right? But it was in the final game. We were playing a line together. We were switching back and forth, center and wing. He's like, Watson, you want to? I'll play center. And like, no, I got it. This is a face-off on our end. I completely blew the face-off, lost the draw. They scored a goal, and he didn't say anything. Just, all right, Watson. I would have done the same thing, but whereas another guy might have got right on me, like, you messed it up and all that. Just a joy to play with, and it's too bad because I didn't realize, and that's me losing contact with people. I didn't realize he was a teacher. I believe he was a teacher, right, in the Durham board.
Yeah, he was a teacher at Dunbarton High School, and coaching their baseball and their golf team and hockey and all those kinds of things. So very much a devoted educator, similar to what you've got going on in Courtice. So you guys probably would have crossed paths at some point.
I don't think we did. I wish we had because he might have been coaching the boys team, I coached the girls. I started coaching baseball later on. I wish I had because I definitely would have met up with him and went up for beer or something like that. I don't know. it's too bad. It was after the fact, I was like, oh, I missed an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, tell me about the 2018 induction, as a team in the Hall of Fame at McMaster, and what it was like seeing, what that reunion was like, and a little bit of what it meant to you to be part of something that got recognized formally by the university.
Yeah, I remember the day I got the email. It was from former Raptors GM. I forget his name now. I should remember his name.
Glenn Grunwald.
Yes, I got it from him, which I was shocked. I'm like, why? Is this a hoax or what's going on? And I think he must have got inundated with emails, so he passed it off to his assistant eventually. But that day, it was a fantastic day. They did such a good job hosting us. We got to go out and watch the football game. At halftime, we got to go out on the field and get recognized in front of the crowd. It was just great catching up with the guys. Many of them I hadn't seen for years and years. Most of them I hadn't seen for years and years. Kind of felt like we had just left each other. Like I connected with quite a few of them. Other ones, life had changed. Not, I wouldn't say changed people, but everyone had families. Everyone had gotten in their careers. It was good to hear some of the stories. Like, oh, we got 2 doctors on this team. This is amazing. So, and talking to Adam Dusky, he's down in the States doing some fantastic thing, probably making tons of money. It's pretty good to hear these stories. Just catching up. What are you guys doing now? Like, how many kids do you? Where are you living? It was fantastic. And the actual got inducted with the football player. Oh my gosh, my memory is terrible now. Jesse Lumsden.
Jesse Lumsden, yeah.
Yeah. So I remember Donnie gave a really nice speech, and he mentioned he was just so proud of all of us and how we all went on to good careers and good people and all that. And it was an amazing experience. I still have the pictures from that. I got a little baseball card. My son's has it in his room. He's proud of it. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, it's very deserving, and a team defined by character as opposed to being characters, although you had some characters for sure in the mix. What advice would you give for someone that might be joining the McMaster baseball team in September of 2024? What would you say to them as someone who has experienced what varsity baseball was like and has seen it at the highest level that McMaster has achieved?
I would say definitely go for it, right? It was a life-changing experience for me. It helped me come out of my shell, make great friends, like I mentioned before. It did help me build my confidence. I would say go out for it, work your butt off, try your best, and it will be a great experience. You'll make the schooling work somehow, right? You mentioned the amount of hours. You figure out how to balance it and do it, right? Don't regret not doing it. I wish I had tried out the first year. That's one of my regrets. I didn't know it was a team at that point. I was just 19-year-old deer in headlights coming to university. That wasn't on my radar to play baseball. Yeah, go for it.
Well, but you probably got to spend some quality time at the downstairs John and the Rat, and
sure.
get to experience life at university. So it's maybe a little bit. It's a little bit like a redshirt year, right? Where it can be overwhelming. And I think we've, on the Brock side, we definitely saw some casualties of first year people coming in and, they're hooking into this fire hose, like drinking from a fire hose. And it's a lot for them. And, there's a playbook, but that playbook has to be passed on by people who have gone through the program and have done this. And you can kind of take these young guys aside and say, boy, you're really going to want to, listen, you're really going to have to work at balancing. And it's hard because the amount of time it takes up, certain things are off the table, right? Like
I definitely
part-time jobs and stuff.
I couldn't have handled that first year. I was coming from a small town. Hamilton was a big city to me. The campus, obviously, university campuses are massive compared to what I came from, and away from the parents. So I would have bombed out if I had tried to play baseball and pass my courses and socialize and all that stuff. So it's probably
I think you've really come a long way. I mean, you seem pretty extroverted, and I know despite some trepidation when we were prepping to start recording, you've had some great stories, and you've been great to talk to. Let me ask you this in a great way to maybe wrap it up: is what is the funniest thing you remember, and on the team in terms of just crazy character. You have some crazy characters. There's no doubt about it. Henry comes up on quite a few podcasts, but you also have Billy Newton in that mix. And, the co-captains there are, Dusky and Gibson are kind of unique characters. Is there any one thing that stands out that you would say, this is definitively the craziest story involving either me or one of these characters, that you just look back at every so once in a while and laugh at when you think about your Mac career?
I can't pinpoint one thing. There's quite a few stories that we mentioned before that I probably can't say on a video. I got to keep it in the past, I guess. Some more Hank stories. I remember one time, it was October. It start getting cold in October. And he was making us do laps. We screwed up somehow, so we had to do some extra laps, and he was pushing us to go hard. And it was so cold, and I think I was hungover. I ended up blowing my hamstrings out. And yeah, so I ended up missing. It hurt like hell when it happened, but I kept pushing myself because I think the adrenaline kicked in, whatever. I missed the next practice, so the following practice I came back, and he's like, "So Watson, what happened here? What like, why'd you miss practice?" Like, just chirping me, right? So I ended up, we were in shorts to practice. I ended up showing him my hamstrings completely black and blue, like all the way up, all the way down. He's like, oh, okay, all right, I'll let that one slide. Just some other, yeah, Gibby was a character. There's a lot of characters. It was a lot of fun. Army, I love him. He had a lot of good stories. He was a talker. But I can't pinpoint one.
No. Well, we'll generate a few. And do you think you're going to feel competitive in about 6.5 months' time and think, man, I'm putting on this uniform again. My kids are good. Your kids are at a great age where they're going to remember this. Do you think you're going to be competitive when you put those colors on again?
I think I will be. I've got a bad hip. I actually got a severe arthritis in my hip, but I'll make do. I still play hockey twice a week, so I just can't walk the next day. I'll get in shape by then. Based on me helping out with my high school practice today, I wouldn't say that, but I will get in shape. I'll get my arm going again. I'm looking forward to it.
Amazing, Mark. We're looking forward to seeing you and your family at the BrockvMac weekend, and really appreciate you giving some time today. You did a great job on it, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you very much for having me on. Take care. See you soon.